The Supreme Court has stepped in and once more halted the Alien Enemies Act-related deportations until further order of the court. It's another wall set up to thwart steps made towards real mass deportation, thanks to the Supreme Court. This is from the New York Post discussing this, and it's titled Supreme Court Blocks New Deportations of Venezuelans in Texas Under the 18th Century Wartime Law. I love how they have to referencing it's an 18th century law. It's the Alien Enemies Act. Okay. The Supreme Court on Saturday blocked, for now, the deportations of any Venezuelans held in northern Texas under an 18th century wartime law. In a brief order, the court directed the Trump administration not to remove Venezuelans held in the Bluebonnet Detention Center until further order of this court. Justice Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito dissented, meaning they disagreed with the other Supreme Court justices. Now, the High Court acted in an emergency appeal from the American Civil Liberties Union, or the ACLU, contending that immigration authorities appeared to be moving to restart removals under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. The year is still irrelevant. The Supreme Court had said earlier in April that deportations could proceed only if those about to be removed had a chance to argue their case in court and were given a, quote, reasonable time to contest their pending removals. That will certainly muck up any attempts at doing mass deportation down the roads, my friends. The ACL lawyer said, "We are deeply relieved that the court has temporarily blocked the removals. These individuals were in imminent danger of spending the rest of their lives in a brutal Salvadorian prison without ever having had any due process." On Friday, 2 federal judges refused to step in as lawyers for the men launched a desperate legal campaign to prevent their deportation. Of course, the reality is they never should have been here in the first place. The idea that we're coddling these a-holes who have no business being here still bothers me, but, let's continue. Now, the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has yet to act. One of the judges said that the case raised legitimate concerns, but he could not issue an order. The ACLU had already sued to block deportations of 2 Venezuelans held in the Bluebonnet facility and sought an order barring removals of any immigrants in the region under the Alien Enemies Act. In an emergency filing early Friday, the ACLU warned that the immigration authorities were accusing other Venezuelan men held there of being members of the Trendy Aragua gang, which would make them subject to the President Donald Trump's use of the act. The act has only been invoked, blah, blah, blah. The Trump administration contended it gave them power to swiftly remove immigrants they identified as members of the gang, regardless of the immigration status. Following that unanimous high court order on April 9th, federal judges in Colorado, New York, and southern Texas promptly issued orders barring removal of detainees under the AEA until the administration provides a process for them to make claims in court. So once again, attempting to slow down the Trump administration. But there had been no such order issued in the area of Texas that covers Bluebonnet, which is located 24 miles north of Abilene in the far northern end of the state. District Judge James Wesley Hendricks, a Trump appointee, this week declined to bar the administration from removing the 2 men identified in the ACLU lawsuit because immigration, or ICE, filed sworn declarations that they would not be immediately deported. He also balked at issuing a broader order prohibiting removal of all Venezuelans in the area under the act because he said removals hadn't started yet. Now, in one case, immigration lawyer Corinne Brown said that her client, identified by initials, was told to sign papers in English even though the client only spoke Spanish. Again, what were they doing in this country in the first place? Get them out. ICE informed the FGM that these papers were coming from the president and that he will be deported even if he did not sign it. Gallant said in a Friday evening hearing before District Judge James E. Boasberg, the corrupt judge in Washington, D.C., and anti-Trump guy, who's got a lot of TDS, that the administration initially moved Venezuelans to its South Texas immigration facility for deportation. So, of course, since the Judge Hendricks did not agree with the ACLU's request for an emergency order, they turned to Boasberg, the corrupt judge who initially halted deportations back in March. And Boasberg told the ACLU lawyer that he was sympathetic. Of course he did to everything you're saying. I just don't think I have the power to do anything about it. Now that is a first for this judge who has constantly been out of order when it comes to the rule of law. So at least he did one thing right this year, I guess. Let's see. Boasberg, blah, blah, blah. He was concerned. Oh, yes, Boasberg was concerned that the paper that ICE was giving these held did not make clear that they had a right to challenge their removal in court, which he believed the Supreme Court had mandated. Now, ICE has said that it will not comment on current litigation. And also on Friday, another Massachusetts judge made permanent his temporary ban on the administration deporting immigrants who have exhausted their appeals to countries other than their home countries unless they are informed of their destination and given a chance to object if they face torture or death there. Again, it's not the American people's responsibility. If you came here illegally, you have no business being here, and we can return you from whence you came, regardless of the outcome. Go try and escape somewhere else then. We don't need you here. We don't want you here. We've been putting up with illegal immigration for decades now, and with 20 to 30 million here in the country, it's just not sustainable. We can't keep absorbing these people. So what does this mean then for the Trump administration and its plan to fight domestic terrorism and mass illegal immigration? Well, the Supreme Court's move here appears to be a doubling down on their order for so-called due process that they had given back on April 7th. Now, what this does, essentially, is halt all the deportations at the Bluebonnet facility, the Venezuelan men. Now, the Supreme Court's order is specific to the Bluebonnet detainees and doesn't block all deportations under the Alien Enemies Act, and it is a temporary measure pending further litigation or a government response to the ACLU's application, which the Supreme Court has urged the U.S. government to file their response as soon as possible. However, the bigger picture here is this. The dream of eventually getting to mass deportation by the Trump administration will be delayed by this action from the courts. You can't get rid of millions of illegal aliens who are festering in this country with so many blocks in the way. Imagine if you're trying to deport 10 to 20 million or 30 million people that are here illegally, and every one of them has to have their day in court, even though they've been here illegally. You're never going to get rid of them. It should be easy. Are you a citizen? Yes, no. If not, did you have a legal right to be here? Yes, no. If not, then you're illegal, then boom, you're gone. That should be it. Simple, just get them out. We don't need to keep them here. There's no reason to argue about, oh no, they're native country. It's bad there. Who cares? It's not our problem. It really is not. And allowing these courts to continue to muddle up the process would make any real mass deportation effort extremely difficult to enforce, if even possible at all, which means at this rate that the Trump administration might have to try another alternate route to get that done. Maybe they're going to need to get Congress to act to help speed up the process, but unfortunately for the Trump administration, the Senate Republicans are weak-kneed people who don't have any backbone, or they actually want the illegal immigration here. Either way, it's bad. So you could expect Republicans within the Senate, for example, to sabotage any effort to try to do mass deportation orders from Congress. So in the meantime, I expect the administration to likely try and adjust their procedure to provide these illegal aliens that they capture clearer notices for the people that they round up, and perhaps even try to give them longer than 24 hours to seek legal counsel. But regardless of what the administration does here to comply with the Supreme Court's order, the ACLU, I think, will continue, and others like them, will continue to do whatever they have to slow down and interfere with the Trump administration's efforts to deport. And in the long run, that's really what this is all about. That's what's so important about this fight now. All the court corruption cases that these judges have done to thwart the Trump administration from deporting people is designed to stop Donald Trump from capturing and deporting mass amounts of illegal aliens. That is the quintessential piece to all of this. This is what it all boils down to. So as long as the courts are able to thwart the Trump administration, to stand in the way of deporting these illegal aliens, mass removal of a much larger group, the 20 to 30 million people here illegally, is not going to be possible, at least not at the scale that we need to see to truly cleanse the U.S. of the infestation of illegal aliens. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens, but that is the latest news from the Supreme Court.